Hi, I'm Lizia Santos, CEO and founder of CityCatt, and I beat the often path and went from journalist to tech travel founder by creating a global community of local influencers who present travelers to trips off the beaten path.
Welcome back to the Beat the Off Path podcast. My guest today is Lizia Santos, the founder of CityCatt, a tech startup that provides more unique and authentic travel experiences for its users. Now, Lizia switched careers from journalism to founding a startup, all while raising 3 children, which in my opinion makes her accomplishments all the more impressive. Her unique perspective on life and travel all led to her founding a better way for us to get connected using technology and to explore new destinations. She's been featured on CNBC, and she was recently ranked number 33 in a list of the 100 best CEOs disrupting tech. So I'm super excited to share the unique perspective of my guest today, Lizia Santos, founder of CityCatt. Whew, I love that. You got that in there twice. We got to play on words in there. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Lizia.
I tried my best.
Yes.
That was hard.
It's very nice. It's a very classy. Now the audience is really confused. They're like, is it off the beaten path? I don't know. The name, I can't remember it. Welcome to the show. First of all,
thank you for having me.
You have a beautiful name, Lizia. I never hear that name often. Where does that come from?
So that's a funny story. It's a Greek name.
Okay.
But I'm actually Brazilian.
Okay.
So my grandpa wanted to name my uncle Lizia, but he was born a boy. So that name, my aunt and my mom fought for it, and I ended up coming first as my mom's daughter, and they named me Lizia, and then they forgot to ask my grandpa where he found the name, and then my grandpa passed away, so nobody knows where he found it. When I was already like 10 or 11, they found out it was a Greek name.
Ooh.
But it is a very unusual name. I never met other Lizias. I'm always the only Lizia.
So a lot of
everywhere I go.
Drama and intrigue there. Who knows what story is behind that? Traveling in the Greek islands, something happened. You never know. That's how these things go down. But we'll imagine that it was the craziest version of that. Well, again, welcome.
It could have been. My grandpa was in the Navy, so.
Oh, you see, I knew it. I knew it. There's always a story like that. He's got a tattoo somewhere of a random girl. But anyways, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you here. You obviously fit the model of what we're trying to talk about because you have changed your careers, but you've also created something about travel itself. Before we jump into your arc, I have to know the name CityCatt. So have you ever watched the show Friends? Did you watch the show Friends in the 90s by any chance? So there was this
Smelly cat. Is that the reference?
No, although that is a good reference as well. That's a good reference too. No, there was this debate. I can't remember who it was between two of them, and they were trying to come up with a massage and a taxi service. And one of them wanted to call it Relaxy Taxi, and the other one wanted to call it Relaxy Cab, and they couldn't get it right. It's not Relaxy Cab, it's Relaxy Cab, and it's Relaxy Taxi, and they were arguing about which is better. I will admit that it took me a stupid amount of time to figure out that CityCatt was a play on words of kitty cat. I thought CityCatt for a very long time, and then only later I thought, oh, it's actually supposed to sound like kitty cat. So it reminded me of that.
Actually, it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all.
It wasn't?
It just ended up being that. No.
Okay.
We thought about playing with the word cat for 2 reasons. Just because of a cool cat, that cool cat,
sure.
Referencing someone that's just nice and cool and friendly, but also because cats are the animals that explore neighborhoods. They know every corner of the city, so we thought the CityCatt could be that person that knows everything. But then we added the extra T, so when people Googled us, they wouldn't find a lot of stuff about pets.
Right.
But then it sounded like kitty cat.
Yeah.
As well.
But it took me forever to make that
reference
connection.
You're making, it seems like that could be a discussion between Chandler and Ross.
Yes, exactly. That was what it was. And then you have to argue about what
that's my guess.
And the irony is that it wasn't what you were intending. So that makes it even funnier that I thought that. I was like, oh, it's this. And no, it's not. Well, okay, then. We're moving on. We're going to get into this episode for real now. Great start. So tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us about the arc that you've had. Coming, like you said, you left journalism. So how did you make the idea to make the switch? What happened in your life to get here?
Well, it was very natural. It wasn't like a moment where I had the idea just randomly. As I mentioned before, I'm from Brazil. I immigrated here to the U.S. about 16 years ago. Sorry, my math is all wrong.
That's it. You're out of the
And I
country.
came here already. Yes.
No, just
I
kidding.
have three
Math skills
kids,
are
so
not a
my
requirement
brain
to
is
live
all
here.
messed up. So I've been here for a while now. I graduated in journalism back in Brazil, and my dream was always to cover international news. That was what I wanted to do for life. So I moved here. I moved for love, actually. I got engaged. I met my husband when I was on vacation here.
Wow.
So I ended up coming here, and I got my master's degrees here. I have two, in public
Wow.
relations and in applied communications. Yeah, my husband jokes that I have more degrees than a thermometer.
Ooh, burn.
Uh,
I like this guy already.
and then, meanwhile, I became a mom here as well. I have three boys, and I lived in three different states. And being an immigrant was it it's hard to explain because you become this person in between, right? You leave your country behind, so you lose a lot of that, but you also never become the culture that you're like being a part of. So I'm not fully Brazilian anymore. I'm not American. So I'm in between. In that makes you sort of like always try to find something, and you're always like going around and trying to find things to identify with, so you become this explorer naturally. And that's something that's common to all immigrants. If you talk to any of us, you'll find out that it's this journey that we have to always try to find ourselves wherever we are. So we're explorers by nature. And I was already a curious person. I became a journalist for that reason. So everywhere I lived, I was trying to find things to do that were different. I didn't, when you move to a new city, you'll do the touristy things for like a month, and then you're sick of it. So you're trying to find other things, other reasons to love that city, right? Because you have to adapt. So I was always that person. As I became a mom, it just changed what I was trying to find. I went from cool nightlife to playgrounds.
Yep.
But still, I'm
I
trying
feel
to find
that.
things. Yes. So, and I was always also hosting people. That's the thing with Brazilians more specifically. We were very friendly. Everybody knows that about us. And we're always hosting people, friends of friends. People will call, hey, there's a friend of friend that wants to visit Orlando or Boston, where I lived before, even Kentucky, where I lived before. And I would host these people that I never knew, I never met before. And I was always trying to introduce these places to people. And if I got $1 for every time I heard people saying, I never knew this existed. I Googled this destination so many times before, and this place that you're showing me now, I never heard about it. And so I always heard that, and I always had that in the back of my head. And then I ended up moving to Florida for my oldest kid has asthma, and we moved here for the weather.
I love it.
And as I was living here, and I got pregnant again. I had my third kid. I had the two youngest, they're 1 year apart. So I was going through this crazy phase of life where no sleep at all. And sort of frustrated because I always loved doing what I do. I always loved being a journalist. And, in that mom phase initially, it's frustrating professionally because you stop doing things, for that purpose. So I was kind of frustrated with that as well, trying to find a way to keep myself active, my brain active. And so I kept like trying to find something else to do. And one day I was coming back from my youngest kid, first pediatrician visit. So I had a newborn, a 1 year old and a 3 year old. And I was driving back and talking to my dad about it, about this thing, this burning that I had inside of me of doing something and finding something else to do. And we were talking about how I love travel and how moving to Orlando, kind of opened that passion back in me, because I was seeing so many people having fun and travelers and all of that. But how people don't really know Orlando, they'll come to the theme parks and that's
World.
it. And they'll stay at international. Yeah. And there's Orlando is so beautiful. People just don't know. They'll say Orlando has no culture, but really it's not true. There's so much to do around Orlando that people don't know about. And we were talking about that, how there's so much more to destinations than people can see. And me as a journalist, I can see that the problem is really the access to information, not the lack of things to do. There is things to do, but people just don't know about it. And how when you have access to a source of information and destinations, it's easier if you know somebody, or if you know somebody that's been there or whatever, you get a better experience. So as we were discussing all of that, I was just trying to be awakened professionally, trying to keep things up there, even though I was lacking sleep. An Uber drove by. That's the story. And as the Uber drove by, that was when I had the light bulb moment, when I connected tech and travel in my mind. That's when I realized, all of these platforms, they're connecting people. They're making people into things that they didn't think they could be. People are becoming drivers, they're becoming deliverers, or they're becoming all of these things through these platforms. Why can't I get all these sources of information and put them in a platform and people can access them? Like, I'm explaining it in like 30 seconds now,
This
but it
is
was
Shark
like a
Tank, by the
2-second
way.
moment.
We got investors over here right behind me. They're in or out right now.
It was a 2-second moment in my mind. So, and that's when I had the idea, tech and travel and journalism and sources of information and destinations and, off the beaten path, everything came together in my mind. And then the journalist Lizia, the mom Lizia, the travel lover Lizia, they all came together. And that's when I found my passion, because now, as a mom, I could do something that's, family friendly, that's safe, that introduces my kids to the world as it is. As a journalist, I get to open the doors for authentic and relevant information. And as a travel lover, people now can explore destinations at another level. So that's when the first idea of CityCatt came to be. But then after that, there's a long journey of trying to figure out what to even do with it. So,
of course.
And that's the case with all founders.
So true. Well, why do you think it is that people, when you travel to other places, especially if you love travel, you can find things that other people don't find? For example, I also experienced that because my wife is from a European country. So I've lived in Europe for 8 years. I know a lot of what you've experienced. And she lived in a city for her whole life, and I was there for a few months, and I was showing her things that she never knew in her own city. What is it about people who like to travel that they find these little weird places? What kind of person finds those little weird places, do you think?
No, it's, as I said before, it's not just that you love traveling, it's that you're trying to find yourself in a new place. It's not, you're out of your comfort zone. When you grow up at a place and you're always there and it's all you've known your whole life, you sort of get yourself in routines, right? You go to the same ice cream shop, you do the same things over and over again. But when you see yourself displaced in a place that you've never been before and nobody knows you, like your identity kind of goes away for a little bit and you're trying to find yourself. So I think that exploration is a big part of finding yourself in a new place. So it's more than loving travel, because some people don't even love travel, but they see themselves in this situation where I'm in a new place and I have to find myself here. And that was your case. You're trying to find yourself there. That was my case in every place that I lived. And I found that it's just a common thread between people, that expats in general,
Right. Well, it's an interesting...
And that's why most of our city cats are expats.
Sure. That is very fascinating. It's an interesting point. And even though it makes so much sense when you say that, it's not a particular thing that I've ever thought before, that you try to find yourself in a place. It's something that I think I've felt, but I never put it in those words before. Because I think, especially travelers, you have this desire, if you're a good traveler, to find the things and embrace the things that are good and better about the place that you're at. Because one thing that we know leads to unhappiness, just in general, is trying to apply the template from where you left behind to where you're going. And when I saw a bunch of
Yes.
Americans in
Yes.
Europe, I was always disappointed that they constantly compared everything back to America. There's, oh, I don't get free refills here. This sucks. The cars are too small. This sucks. Nobody's coming over immediately to give me drinks at the restaurant. This sucks. They just keep comparing. Like, I can't wait to go back to big roads and big cars and Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
And they're always comparing. And I think, but have you
Yeah.
ever thought about what's better here? Not everything that's
Yes.
different is worse. And I believe that no matter where you
Exactly.
go, there's always something that's better. No matter where you go, they have something, whether that's Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Orlando, Florida, or Rio de Janeiro. There's
Yes.
always something. But if you don't look for it, you'll never
Yes.
find it.
Yeah, exactly. And it fascinates me that there's hundreds of thousands of different ways to do the same thing. If you go to different destinations, as you said, even like neighborhood cities, it's neighbor cities, there's still different ways to do things within the same country, the same state. So that to me is fascinating. But I'll tell you something that I've come to learn as a travel tech founder, and by observing the market. There's also a generational jump in there. Before, our parents, the Gen X's, and before that, travel was more of a packaged thing. You buy a package and you expect certain things, and those packages, they sort of accommodate the culture of the people coming. So, as you said, Americans, so they're packages made for Americans traveling to Europe, and they sort of accommodate the needs of Americans, the expectations of Americans. So they're not lacking those things, they're not complaining about those things, and that's how the industry thought before. But now we have the millennials who are the parents now, right? We're the ones that are organizing the trips. We have the kids and we have our parents joining us in trips, and we're the trip planners. And we're this very unique generation that grew up without technology. So we know how to play outside. We know how to play without anything. We can use our imagination. And somewhere between, like in our teenage years, we had technology. So we're tech, but we also have this need for human, authentic. We had all this, we were exposed to a lot of information that our parents didn't have. So now this generation is wanting to do that, what you just described. We want to see what's beyond. More than that, we want our kids to see it. We want to introduce our kids to something that goes beyond what they can experience in their hometowns. And we do that through travel. But at the same time, we also want that to be enabled through technology. So it's a very unique challenge right now that the whole industry is facing. How can we deliver authenticity in a scalable way through tech? How can we use AI without taking the human out of the equation? That's how can we assist them when they put their feet in destination, when they place their feet in the destination? How can we assist them? How can we make sure that they have this authentic experience and they get to know the destination? And it's when you get the authentic, you come back, because then you realize, I haven't seen, I only saw the tip of the iceberg, really. I could come back 10, 15 times to the same destination and still get authentic out of it, because it's so much bigger than, whatever you can see at the first time. I mean, I could talk about
this
it.
is great. Well, the other thing about these tech platforms, and you mentioned Uber driving by and the marriage of tech and people, and that is an interesting thing. And what I find to be fascinating is these things at the beginning are a little bit different from what they evolve into. When Uber was new, people didn't know how they had to interact. There wasn't an established pattern. Uber drivers say, do I give you water or chewing gum? Can you charge your phone? Should we talk? Should we not talk? Everybody had to figure out what that relationship actually was. Now it's just get in the car, whatever. But in the beginning, it was different. And when Airbnb was new, this is an interesting experience. When Airbnb was brand new, and nobody really knew what it was supposed to be. I booked one in Ohio, near Cleveland somewhere. And this guy, and I'll never forget him, his name was Andrew Samtoy. He's still out there, a really good guy. He was my first Airbnb experience. We arrive at this house, and he's still staying at this house. He's living there, and he's got a wall of maybe 200 whiskeys and bourbons on the wall, and he says, welcome to Ohio. Let's start by you sampling every single one of these. And his idea of being a host, that's
really
wasted,
nice.
obviously, but his idea of being a host was let me show you all of this stuff. And then he went so far above and beyond. He drove us around and he said, let's go check out Amish country. So he drove us to Amish country, went to an Amish
Wow.
store, and then he was showing us these markets and this fair, all this stuff that he didn't have to do because he was proud of his town and he really wanted to show us around. And it was fantastic. And he was also a budding entrepreneur before I cared much about entrepreneurship. And he was teaching us about Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he's explaining how all of the
Wow.
advantages of living in Ohio. And it was just such a great experience. And I think it was because none of us knew what an Airbnb relationship exactly was supposed to be. And at that time, you kind of felt that the human element was a big part of it. It wasn't just here's the keys or punch in a code to my place. He thought, let's make it more than that. And he was a
Yes.
very special guy, but it represented kind of the feeling that you're talking about. And he brought us to places that we never would have found. There's no way we would have found those places without him.
Yeah, and that's how Airbnb started. That was the mission, belong anywhere, right? That's the tagline since the beginning. That's the idea that they had. People helping out and more than just hosting. But then it became an industry that nobody could have anticipated. Now you have whole industries that came out of that,
How could
how
they?
could they know, how the market reacts, and then it ends up changing the company. You're right. You can never anticipate what it would
But the
become.
feeling,
I
it's the feeling. And
No,
that
go ahead.
feeling is exactly what I think you're doing. And that's why it's so profound, because that feeling is incredible. And the feeling of I get to see something and not just what's on the map. And also, if you live in a place that has a lot of tourist attractions like Orlando is, where everybody comes to Epcot Center, Disney, whatever, you understand that most people are funneled into those things. I lived in Amsterdam for a couple years, and
That's
I
right.
witnessed the way that every single tourist would go to the Dam Square. They'd go from the Amsterdam train station, they would walk a single mile down one road, and then they would come back to the train station, and that was their journey.
Yes.
But I also witnessed the fact that no Dutch person would ever set foot in any of those places, ever. They never went where the tourists went, ever. So there was just a complete disconnect.
Yeah. So are you really experiencing the Dutch
Yeah, and
culture?
of course not.
Or are you experiencing what they packaged
Right.
for you? That's right.
You're not.
You're not.
Yeah.
You're not. Yes. That guy sounds like a CityCatt to me. You gotta give him his
Okay.
contact.
Yeah,
I
he
gotta
very well.
onboard
I
him
don't know where he is.
as a
It's been many
platform.
years. It was just, I remember the name, but it was quite some time ago. Who knows how many years ago at this point? At least 10, I think. But yes, he does sound like a city cat. He would make an excellent cat, no doubt about it. He fits the model. So when you have this idea for a tech company, I think who hasn't had an idea at some point in their life? I'm going to build the next Uber, but for donuts. That's me. I think I'm going to do that. And then 5 days later, it's like, what about your idea? What idea?
That's actually a very good
exactly.
idea.
I know,
I
it's
would buy
brilliant.
into
I'm
it.
a fountain of brilliant ideas. I don't do anything about any of them. How did you actually say, I'm going to do this? How did you know that you're going to follow through? And what were the steps that you took to actually follow through on building your idea?
See, I'm labeled as the crazy one within my friends because, I dared to do that when I had the three little kids. I
That
had
is
a newborn,
crazy.
a
I'm
1-year-old,
going
and
to
a
second
3-year-old.
that.
Yes. But it has a lot to do with my personality. And I think founders, they do have to have a certain personality, tech founders more specifically. I am very hyper as a person. And that's when I'm happy is when I'm busy. So I feel like to me, it was important that I pursued something professionally at that moment to keep me sane. Because as a mom of 3 little boys, it takes a lot of yourself, you become nobody. You're just serving everybody at the same time. So to me, I needed something for myself, and I needed something that wouldn't take me away from the boys. So it made sense to me in that moment to do something like that. I had an idea and I could explore it in my own pace. So to me, it was that personally. As a founder, like if I were to put it like generally, how to even start that, I also think it's hard to answer that question because it's a very personal journey for everybody. How do you it has everything to do with like your learning style, your pace, your circumstances, all of that. Since I had the time and nobody had the idea, and I just kept quiet and I surveyed a lot. That was the start to me. As a journalist, it was natural for me to survey. Let me find out how big of a problem this is. Is it just my problem? It took me a while also to even figure out that what I was doing was a startup. To be honest, I had the idea. I was passionate about the concept, but I wasn't familiar with startups and this whole world of like scalability. All of these words weren't in my vocabulary back then. So it started with me going after people and asking them, hey, how long do you spend planning trips? Hey, are you satisfied with your trips? When you come back from trips, do you feel 100% satisfied? Or do you feel like that little FOMO, I'm a little frustrated. I know I haven't experienced it all. And I asked these questions and I surveyed close to 700 people back then.
That's a
and
lot.
I came to interesting numbers. Yeah, like more than 60% of people in my survey said, I'd rather experience authentic than spend more to upgrade a hotel, for example. And after I had some numbers like that coming back, like 85% of people said, if I have a friend in my destination, or if I know someone who has been there before, I go for that friend. Instead of researching online, I call the friend, I text the friend, because then I don't waste the time, trying to find that information. Another info back then that I got, the average traveler in my survey spent more than 20 hours planning trips.
Whoa.
And so my surprise when I went online and I tried to match my own numbers with what was going on in the industry is that it was a perfect match. Like almost the exact same numbers, 67% of people, and that is data from surveys, prefer authentic. The average traveler does spend 10 to 20 hours planning trips, and that is after booking a flight. So all of these things kind of empowered me with the data that I needed to start even thinking about something. And what I knew back then, as you said, you sort of like correlate with these things that are already out there. And my idea came from Uber back then. I knew that I needed an app. That was my idea. So how do I even start that? Me personally, I went after one of my family members who is an entrepreneur to share the idea with him, just to see what he would say, some sort of advice. He ended up becoming my investor, my first
Cool.
investor. And that's how I ended up developing an app that I never needed. I wasted all the money developing an app that never got ready. And, this company overseas never delivered the full product. And that's how in my journey I ended up with no app.
Oh, no.
And wasting all the money and having to rethink everything.
Oh, no.
So you could rethink everything based on the industry remarks, but you also have to rethink everything sometimes when you run out of cash.
Oh, that old thing.
That's where I saw myself back then. So that sort of changed CityCatt once again. When I first had the idea for CityCatt, I knew that I needed to connect travelers with locals to create authentic trips. But I was thinking along the lines of meeting in person and guiding people in cities. And I needed an app for that because I wanted it to be just like Uber, where you see the car coming and it's all like the safe experience. And I wanted it to be family friendly. But when I had the fall, I realized, maybe that's not the most scalable thing I can do. Maybe I don't even need an app to enable all of that. So we ended up switching to the trip planning stage of the trip. And now the idea has evolved so much more than that. Always having technology in mind as the enabler to scale the processes, but knowing that my big thing here is the CityCatt, not the platform itself.
So
So, I matured.
Sure.
But it takes time.
So when did you decide that all of the CityCatts needed to show up wearing a bright neon pink and purple cat mask to be instantly identified?
Well, that was actually my 7-year-old idea.
That's a joke. It's just like, this is a waste of time.
I don't
Well,
know.
is it? I don't know.
Is
Lyft
it?
had the pink mustache. They put the mustache on the card. We all forgot about that one, but they did do that for a while.
Yes, the cat ears.
They
They all
all
have
have
to
to wear
wear
cat ears. So
cat ears.
where are? Oh, there they are. You get a
Oh, there he
crowd of
is.
thousands of people. They got bright pink cat ears. But that does.
Okay. That would be
Okay, all
awesome,
right,
though.
good. I'm glad I can provide some meaningful advice on this show. Very good.
Thank you. You
Yeah,
should be my
exactly.
advisor.
701 opinions now that you have collected. With the last one being the most
Or the people
important.
that said that it was a dumb
Right,
name.
exactly. Yeah,
There
that's, I have
were
nothing but-
those. That's a dumb name.
Super helpful, guys. So, and they accompany you on these trips. If they plan it, they'll join you on the trips themselves, right?
Not
Okay.
yet. That is another service that we're calling the cat outing.
Oh.
You'll be able to hire them to actually meet up with you and take you out in the
But
city.
they just say, hey, that's a stupid idea. Don't go there. Don't avoid that. But you might want to go here. And then you say, oh, that does sound nice.
Yes, yes. Yeah, because like there's basic things. Many people have experienced this, right? You go to Airbnb and you pay for the house that is renovated. It looks really nice, and you get there, it's a really bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
You had no idea. So like going back to the basics like that, a cat can help you. You know, hey, don't stay there. You know, stay here instead. This is closer to where you want to have experiences in the city. This is safer. Whatever is your need when you're traveling. So from basic things to really going really deep in a destination, a cat is there for you. It's your boots on the ground.
Do the cats ever just say, hey, don't come here at all. It's not worth it? Plan a trip somewhere
Never
else.
happened.
I know you really think you want to go to Colorado
Never
Springs,
happened.
but you're better off. Just go anywhere else. That could be some very real advice.
If it happens, I'll let you know.
I think
Yes,
go to
it
Sweden
could.
instead.
I think in this case, we would offer
okay.
a refund.
This is no deal. How many cities, how many cats, how many markets are you in right now?
Yeah, so we currently operate in more than 40 countries, 89 destinations, and we have 202 cats. Our community of cats is a curated community, so we sort of keep the growth under, that. We have that in mind. We're curating a community, so we don't want it to go too big in the moment on purpose. So that's where you can get CityCats to help you currently. Cities all around the world.
Okay, great. Cities all around the world. Great. So in the next 5 years, if everything goes remarkably well, everything goes according to plan, what do you expect? What do you hope for? What's your dream from all of this?
My vision is that we're going to change the way people experience destinations, and CityCat will be this. It's when you think about CityCat, you're thinking about a trip that it's at another level. You either go to a regular trip or you go with a CityCat trip, which means you're going to get to know the destination at its core. So we want to have CityCats in every single destination. If you think about a remote island, there's a CityCat there for you. So there's the friend for you wherever you go, a friend in every city. That's what I say to myself. You'll have a friend in every city to help you in all journeys of the trip, from trip planning to experiencing. We'll be there for you, so you're never alone.
I think that's a great and noble mission, and there's a lot of people who feel pretty lonely right now, and certainly after the last few years. So having somebody that can help them get out of their shell, that's a pretty valuable thing, I think.
Correct. Yes, correct.
And we can
You bring
remember,
a valuable point, especially after the pandemic. That is a need.
Yeah, and we can remember that, it's nice to connect with other people. We kind of forgot that for a while. Not that Zoom isn't the best thing in the world, but there's this other thing. There's another part of the world than just what's inside the walls of your apartment. That's something we all have to remind ourselves of.
There is. And it's so interesting. You should go there.
Yeah, right. Well, I really, really thank you for taking the time. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and get to know you and get to know your idea. I think it's really cool. It's something I personally believe in, so I hope that we can spread the message, and I really hope that you achieve your goal.
Amen to that. If it's up to me, we will. If I hadn't given up when I had 3 little kids, I won't give up now. that you
That's
can know
right. You're
about me.
saying, kids, business, kids, business. Just go with the business. The kids will be fine. No,
Well, they're now
but
7, 8 years old. I'm fine. I've survived the
that's right.
worst.
Things have changed.
Yes.
So I like to ask this question at the end. What is one piece of unusual advice or something that you believe that nobody else believes? Is there an unusual piece of advice that you follow?
As far as a startup, like founding
Just
startups,
or
or
life,
for your life, for
anything.
your life in general. I think I'll go with something that applies to both, and it's do not expect things to be perfect before you try. Things won't be perfect, and that's just it works for motherhood, for your founding journey. They will never be perfect. There's not any sort of level of preparing that you can do that will get you there to perfection. You need people. You need feedback. You need to fall. You need to have people offering their hands to pick you up from your fall in order to learn lessons and open your eyes to things that you wouldn't be able to see if you didn't have those people around you. So as a mom, as a professional, as any role in my life, I now understand that it's better to expose myself with something that's halfway there, and then have someone open my eyes before I go out there and I try to launch things on my own perfection standards. Sometimes it's not what the world needs. It's not what my kids need. So I need people. You need people. That being in your travels, in your personal life, in your professional life, expose yourself and let the feedback come in, and then work with that to then get to perfection.
I think that's great. The alternative title for my show is Halfway There. That's where I'm at. So,
Exactly.
but it's great
Go
advice.
halfway.
I love it.
And have some people join you in the other half.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure. Again, thank you so much. And I want to leave the final word to you to close this out. So again, put the address, whatever you want to share, whatever action you want people to take. Wrap this episode up. I leave the floor to you.
All right. So I want to invite all of you out there to not just travel, but travel in an authentic way. Get to experience the core of cities. Open your eyes to the different ways of doing things that every culture has to offer you. I invite you to go to CityCatt.com and to hire a cat. You can plan your trip by yourself, but I would highly recommend you hire a cat to take your trip to the next stage. And if you're a micro-influencer who loves exploring your city, I also invite you to join us in the platform as well. Go to CityCatt.com and you can choose what you want to do. What's your journey with us? But I invite you to hop on this journey with us because it's a pretty cool one.
That sounds great. And it's City, CityCatt, 2 T's in cat.com.
Correct.
And Lizia Santos, thank you so much for joining me. And
it's been my pleasure.
With that, the official podcast is over.